The last session of this first conference day will be done by Kevin Lam. Kevin works at Microsoft for around 23 years already. And in his current position, he's a principal product manager for Azure messaging services like Azure Service Bus, Event Bus, and Event Grid. And today, Kevin will update us on the present and the future of Azure messaging, followed by an overview on what's new in Event Grid. So yeah, please go ahead.
It's all me. Okay. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the end of the first day of Integrate. I'm very excited to be here. For those who have a history with this conference, you probably have recognized me from doing talks on logic apps. One of the things that I've recently changed is I moved from the logic apps team to lead our Azure messaging set of services. So it's a kind of a new hello to all you guys. First, I'll start with what I will not talk about today. So in the past, you may have gone through some other sessions where we've talked about various things from various speakers, and so I will not talk about bow ties or vests or funny hats in this session today, nor will wear any. I will not talk about how I married and divorced a BizTalk server. One interesting side note is that my wife did ship the first versions of BizTalk Server. So I've had a very long history with BizTalk, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. And finally, I will not talk about sporks. Sporks, is a great metaphor for, using the right tool for the right job and not trying to use the, just because it works doesn't mean that it's right type of analogy, but we'll not talk about sporks. What will we talk about? We're going to talk about Azure messaging. So Azure messaging is a set of services in Azure that provide our messaging kind of suite of services. The first one is Azure Service Bus. Azure Service Bus is our enterprise messaging platform for queues and pub sub on topics. Next is Azure Event Hubs. Azure Event Hubs is our data streaming platform. Next is Azure Event Grid. Azure Event Grid is our discrete event publish subscribe capability. And then Azure Relay that helps you connect to your across VNets and to on-premises resources. So I'll talk about these today. What I'll do today is I'll dive into Azure Event Grid, and later on in the conference, we have other folks on my team who will go into Azure Service Bus and Event Hubs in great detail. So why do we have so many messaging products? I talked about sporks. I promised I would not talk about sporks, but how about hammers and nails? If all you have a hammer, then everything looks like a nail, and you're trying to jam things into products where they don't necessarily belong. And so we want to make sure that we're providing you the set of capabilities that you need for the type of messaging workload that you're trying to accomplish. So to kind of get at the heart of which messaging platform to use, we should start with what is a message. And figuring out what the message is, then that will help indicate which product you should actually use. So when you have a message, messages can either be facts or commands. With commands are messages that have intent, right? There's value in that message, the content of that message as it gets passed from one system to another, and there's a transaction, a handoff process that's being done. There's a trust that message is going to be handled down the line. So for these types of messages, we have enterprise messaging, which is our Service Bus product. Enterprise messaging is a push-pull with FIFO semantics, so it's first in, first out. So as a classic queuing system, our queues, are able to do application partitioning. So if you want to think about splitting your application to multiple components and you want to hand off work from one component to another, right? You pass that message off into a queue, and then you can trust that the next component will actually do the next part of that work for you. Load leveling, either the system that you built out or downstream systems can only handle certain type of load. It's scaled out for an expected throughput. And when you get a spike in those messages, you want to be able to not get overwhelmed in your system or your downstream systems, so you can have queues do load leveling for these spiky workloads. Queues also handle transactions. They're transactional, so that means once and only once processing. You can actually participate in transactions, so you can send to multiple entities within a transaction, so you can have that ACID capability. You also have an in-order delivery, so that you have to trust that your debit account will be incremented before it's decremented, so then you don't get charged when you fees when you don't expect it. So there's a trust in that delivery process. And the delivery is not only in provides just in order, but then you have sessions where you can actually have messages split into a series or convoys of in-order delivery. And it also has bad message handling. So we want to do deduplication, message deferral, or poison message handling with dead letter queues, right? That's all built into the platform as well. Service Bus also has topics, and those topics support the same capabilities as queues, but is a pub-sub type of communication pattern. So you have a single publisher and multiple subscribers to receive those messages. And those subscribers have filter rules, so they only get the messages that they actually care about. And those can be sent to hundreds of concurrent subscribers at the same time. You can also do message routing, so you can go from one entity to another within the platform. And overall, Service Bus is like the Swiss Army knife for your messaging workloads, and so it can handle many different types of architectural patterns for your application needs. Facts. So the next type of message that you have is a fact. And facts come in two flavors. There are time series and discrete types of events or facts. A time series is it's when the set of events is more interesting than a singular event. If you have a thermostat that says it's 20 degrees, it's 20 degrees, it's 20 degrees, 25 degrees, 25 degrees, 20 degrees. One of those events is not so interesting, but the collection of events is interesting. If my thermostat says I was at 25 degrees or higher for 5 minutes, then something interesting should happen. So it's the collection of those events that's important. For these time series types of events, that's data streaming or event streaming, and that's our Event Hubs platform. So Event Hubs is an ingestion and storage of large event streams. So it's really thinking about the ability to ingest, greater than 2 gigabytes per second if you need to, into an Event Hub. It's intended to have client offsets for arbitrary reads and rereads. That means the client controls the cursor for which you're reading the messages from. So it's like a tape, right? You're pulling that tape. I can reread that stream at any time, where in a classic queue or topics, you have a lock on a message and it's a server-side control for that. Event Hubs have partitioned streams, so that you can have consumers who are only interested in the particular partition get those streamed events into those partitions. Those partitions can have a data retention anywhere from 1 to 90 days, so that you can continue to reread those messages or come back later and read that set of messages. And if you need longer time, you need to do different types of processing, we have automated archival with capture, so you can go push those set of events into a storage account and then do analysis on those later and keep them for a much longer amount of time. And we also have publisher policies to ensure that you can do origin attestation to ensure that the person who's actually sending it, the client who's actually sending it, is that client. If some IoT device is ensured that it's authorized to send to that event hub. And so event streams, is about this ingestion and stream processing, right? This is not intended for command type of messaging, right? We don't want to get these two confused. The other type of events are discrete events, right? Discrete events describe something that's happened and that you're interested in that event that has happened. And that's, for a particular moment in time. So, in this image, the light has changed from green to red, right? That's an interesting event that I want to react to and handle. There's a new blob in my blob store. There's a new message in my queue, and I want to go react to that event that has occurred. So for discrete event publication, we have Event Grid, right? Event Grid is a ingestion and push style distribution of these discrete events. And so this is a push-push type of mechanism. And push-push means that the client pushes or publishes a message into Event Grid, and then that message gets pushed to the consumers of those messages, so that there's no hammer polling saying, hey, are there more messages for me? We have a webhook that will actually push that message to you. That's really great for serverless workloads where they can go ingest all those messages and handle them, and the serverless platform goes and handles that workload that as comes in. On those subscriptions, you can have simple and complex subscription filters, so you only get the types of events that you really care about. If there are no subscriptions and nobody's listening to it, Event Grid does the smart and efficient work of not going ahead and sending those out to anywhere. Right? Those just get dropped, and the topic owner doesn't have to worry about it. There's abuse protection built into Event Grid so that nobody goes ahead and attaches random endpoints to subscriptions, and there's a protocol for how there's an exchange between the the subscription and the consumer, on that endpoint. We've been working really hard with the CNCF to get to Cloud Events 1.0. So we support the Cloud Events 1.0 standard, so you can send and receive events with that Cloud Event schema. We have multi-tenancy support for SaaS applications, and we have an extensive catalog of event sources and syncs that we'll talk about in a little bit. So, as we think about Event Grid is a pub sub system, right? Its intent is to broadcast events, right? I'm going to let everybody know that something has happened from my service. It's a statement about past tense events, something that's happened, and something that's happened, then I will let people know of things that have happened, as opposed to things that will happen or want you to do something. Event Grid has event sources. Those event sources push events to the topics for broadcasting, right? I'm just announcing that something has happened, and I don't care, who's listening, right? My job is to just announce to the world that an event has happened, but I'm not, I don't have any attachment to the people who are listening, right? There could be many listeners, there could be no listener, that's okay. And event handlers, and there's event handlers, which are syncs to those requests, right? So they're aware of the publisher. I create a subscription to a particular topic because I want to be able to react to that event. And so I am very aware of what that is. And I'm responsible for reacting to that event, right? So it's my job to go and decide to do something or not to do something as a side effect of that event coming to me. So when we look at Event Grid, on the left-hand side, we have types of event sources. We have custom topics, so that allows you as an application developer to publish your own topics, publish events to your own custom topics, and then you can have whoever listen to those topics as event handlers. And then we have system topics, and system topics are our first-party Azure services that participate and send messages and events to those system topics. On the right-hand side, we have event handlers. And event handlers, we have different flavors of event handlers for different types of application workloads. Currently, our event handlers include Azure functions, so that an Azure function can go ahead and subscribe and listen to those events, and you can write your snippets of code to go and handle those events. Particularly for this crowd, we have workflow and integration, so you can send those messages to Service Bus For example, if you want to do load leveling across your applications that react to those events, then you can do that with Service Bus or Logic App, which can then do richer processing of that message, either through transformation or reactive type of codeless workflows. You can send it to event hubs, right? Event hubs will then go ahead and put those into a stream or send it to a storage queue, and you can do buffering and separation, through those types of messaging platforms as well. And then we have other endpoints. So we have a raw webhook, so anything can go ahead and subscribe to that and participate, as well as hybrid connections, which is Relay, being able to connect across VNets or to an on-prem endpoint. So in the set of system events, we have quite a number of services that publish events as system topics, from blob storage to resource groups to say, hey, there's a new resource in your resource group or something's changed. Azure subscriptions, event hubs, media services, IoT hub, Service Bus, Azure Maps, right? You can do zones with Azure Maps, something's entered or left a zone. ACI, Azure Container Registry, SignalR, app configuration, Azure Machine Learning, and cloud events, cloud event sources that can go ahead and publish, right? On the right-hand side, we still have the same event handlers. One of the most recent additions that we announced just about a few weeks ago is the addition of app services. So now app services is a new system event source that will publish events about things that are happening in your app service, right? Your app services plan has changed, it's scaled up or down, etc. So we talked about custom topics and system topics and for event sources. And one of the recent additions that we've had, we announced just last week, is the addition of partner topics. Partner topics allowed third-party SaaS providers to go ahead and behave just like our Azure services and publish events to topics that anybody can go and listen to. And so then it's treated just the same as a system topic once you're on board. Our first partner who's on board as a partner topic is Auth0. Later on in the session today, I'll do a demo that shows how we integrated with Auth0. Auth0 has been a great partner, and it's a identity provider that can allow you to go and listen to events about your things that happen within Auth0. There's a new user, an email has been changed for a particular identity, their role has changed, password sign-in failures. They have a dozen events that they publish to their partner topics, and then you can go ahead and subscribe to and then react to those events that occurred from Auth0. So we also have Event Grid on IoT Edge. This provides the ability for you to have Event Grid, side by side with your IoT components, and it can listen to blob modules, of course, cloud event sources and custom events, so that modules can communicate across each other using Azure Event Grid, and it can talk to other custom modules and functions on modules, etc. So this is a great way to have inter-module messaging on your IoT devices. Looking to the future, we're going to go and continue pushing on the edge. And what you'll see coming down the line is Event Grid on Kubernetes. So we'll have a managed Event Grid being able to not only deal with IoT, but then other components that are involved in your containerized applications, or running on the edge or disconnected as well. So we've done some work in the area of security. One of the things that we've done is we've added AED to protected endpoints. So you can now use AED to protect the endpoints that you're communicating to. We've also recently added and is released now in previews, managed identity. So you can have a system assigned managed identity for topics, so that, for example, if you have a custom topic, you can have a managed identity on that custom topic. So then your handlers can go ahead and trust that identity, and you can assign roles to that identity so that it has permissions to access, your function or your webhook. We also added private links, so you can have a private endpoint for the publishers, so that as you're publishing, you can make sure that if you have a lockdown VNet, you can use a private endpoint, and the private endpoint provides your own IP address being published and having a secure channel from your component into EventGrid. So what's coming next? So for this, that we're going to, of course, these managed identity and private links are in preview. We will go ahead and GA those later this year. We will also include bring your own key. So bring your own key is the ability to have your key used for encryption, as well as double encryption. So we will encrypt at rest, as well as utilizing your key to go ahead and encrypt it again for those who need that level of security. But we're not done. So what else is coming? So we have work coming later this year where we're going to look at dedicated resources. So today, with Azure EventGrid, you can publish into our large space, and we will handle all those requests for you, but you're in a shared space. So we're looking to have the ability for you to have dedicated resources so that you don't have any noisy neighbor issues. You can get much higher throughput capabilities, particularly as you're looking at those custom topics and your own application development. You want to have those types of guarantees. Another thing that we'll be working on is primary and secondary locations for subscriptions. So this will allow you, for example, if you have on your subscription a particular location, but that location has gone down or is unavailable, then we'll have a backup location that you can send to that will route to automatically without you having to go and handle that yourself. We'll add HTTP 2.0 support for data plane, and we'll also add more advanced filtering operator types. So today we have a set of operator types. We're going to extend that set of operator types coming this year as well. We'll have some new handlers. So the first one we'll do is the event capture to storage, so that you can go ahead and all the events that come in to your topic can then get pushed into storage. And then you have a nice way to have a record of all your captured events without you having to write extra code to make that happen. And then we'll also add a first class of logic apps handler. So today, we do a great job integrating with logic apps with the trigger, but we want that to be more discoverable in our subscription. So then we'll go ahead and discover those logic apps that we can push to. But wait, we're not done, right? We didn't talk about all our products. I have this thing called security, right? Firewalls and the ability to communicate across them. For that, we have Azure Relay. So Azure Relay provides you the ability to have a reverse proxy from your on-premises entities back up into the cloud. So this will give the opportunity for that. Since it's a reverse proxy, it's the client on premises or inside that VNet that's making the request outbound, right, to our Relay service, and then Relay service is responsible for connecting that session. So then you can have bidirectional communication across that session, then thereby being able to go through those firewalls without you having to go ahead and punch holes into your firewalls for that type of communication. Relay is used as a underpinning component for the on-premises data gateway, which is what's used in Power BI and Logic Apps and Power Apps and Power Automate, and you name, I have to keep that in my head. And that's what makes that connectivity so easy. So it's a great way to communicate for these walled endpoints. So we want to bring all that together, right? So we talked about all these different services, with Azure, with Service Bus and Event Hubs and Event Grid and Relay. And, yes, they're distinct services, but they can also be used together at the same time. So I'll do a demo showing how we're using our partner topics, connecting to Auth0. That Auth0 will then will have a subscription to that topic that will publish on that partner topic, and have a logic app that's listening to that event grid topic, and then push to service bus and event hubs. Well, why would we do that? With event grid is a great way to do discrete message publication. And with that, you want to be able to react to those messages. So with logic app, you can go ahead and handle that. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a process router that will take those messages and then be responsible for parsing the message, understanding how to route it to different endpoints. And so we'll use service bus as that ability to split the application components so that there's a separation of concerns between the type of event and the source of that event and how that event actually gets handled. And so we can use a set of service bus queues to go ahead and create that separation of concerns. We'll also send the event to event hubs, because even though we're handling that event, in this case, we'll handle a new user sign-on event. So in that case, the downstream component that's listening to the service bus queue can then do things like send a welcome message, update a CRM account for that person, and notify some operations team that somebody else has onboarded, and so then they can react to that. But sometimes I actually want to listen to the collection of events that's occurred. Auth0 has dozens of types of events, and even though I'm reacting to each of those events discretely, sometimes the collection of those events is interesting as well. And so if I see that there's anomalies where somebody has failed to log in a number of times, or has been changing their email address or password a number of times, that might be an anomaly that we want to go and handle. So event hubs can then send those to Azure Stream Analytics, and when there's a number of failures in a 5-minute period, then we can have another discrete message that's a side effect of that, again publishing to event grid, which then you can have some system go and react to for that. And one of the things I won't build in the demo, but is a simple extension to what we're building, is as one of the downstream components, I may want to be able to batch those messages together. When those messages have reached a certain criteria for that batch, I want to send it to a file on-prem where I have a more classic system that's listening to that batch of messages that's coming into a file and then process it. Or I want to be able to push those into an on-premises SQL database. I can go ahead and use Relay, either through the on-premises data gateway or directly as a handler for those set of events that gets pushed there. So let's go ahead and switch over to the demo. Get the right screen up. Okay, actually, first thing I'm going to do is go to Auth0. So what you see on my screen here is the Auth0 page, and here you can go ahead and create streams. So this is what they have as a way to create these topics for your tenant, and I created this Azure Event Grid Integrate topic. And so here you can see a sample payload, and essentially all the events that occur in Auth0 are going to get published to this topic. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and add new users, and we can go ahead and look at that. So let's first go to our logic app. And I have a logic app here pre-created. And this logic app is listening to the events coming from Auth0. It's subscribed to that Auth0 topic. So when that message comes in, the first thing I want to do is I want to send that message to event hubs. So Logic Apps makes this super easy. So without code, I'm able to integrate all these different messaging components. So here I'm going to pick my event hub. This is Auth0 events, and I'm going to have a content. That content will be the data the data source for the event that's coming in. Okay, so next the thing I'm going to do, right now that now this event's being pushed out to event hubs, I want to go ahead and parse that message, right? So every good integration application needs to do message parsing so we can understand the message and make sure it's well formatted. So I'm going to do a parse JSON. I know the message type that's coming in is a cloud event, and it's, so I'm going to parse that cloud event. Again, the data is coming from event grid, and I'm going to use a sample payload. Here's my sample payload I have copied here. And so this is a sample payload that's coming from Auth0 with the information in it. And so Logic Apps will create that schema for me. And now we have a schema, for that message that's coming in. So now that I've parsed that message, I can now go ahead and look at the type. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and now I want to route that message. Right, so this Logic App is acting as my process broker. So the events come in, I've sent it to event hubs. Now I want to be able to broker it to different components of my application. So I'm going to send it to, actually I'm not going to do that, take that back. I will use a switch statement. So based on the event type that's coming in, right? So this is from my parsed message. I will go ahead and do different things based on the event type. Each event type has a different part of the payload that it deals with. And so I want to react in different ways. So for the first case, I know that I want to handle a new user sign up. I happen to know from the dozens of codes that they have in Auth0 that SS is the successful sign up type, message type. So the next thing I'm going to do is add, I'm going to transform that message that's come in from Auth0 because my downstream component doesn't understand that type. So I'm going to go ahead and compose a new message. Right, so this is your simple JSON transformation. So the first thing I need is the username. Go down here and I look for a username. Next, I'll add a date. That will be date. So I want to keep this message simple. Of course, these would be much more complex, as you deal with your systems. But for demonstration purposes, we'll make sure that we keep this straightforward so we can get this done in time. Okay, so here's my simple message. I've transformed a more complex message that's coming in from Auth0, and now composing a new message, right? And I can even change the name here, right? New user message, and I will now send that message to service bus. I'm going to send it to a queue. And so in this case, I'm going to send it to the user queue. I have a number of queues that I can route this to. And then the content that I want to send is the output of my compose. So it's that simple. I've been able to parse the message, switch based on the type, and send it. I can continue adding more case statements. In this case, when there's a successful change email, again, I can go ahead and parse it, but I'll just keep this simple, and I'll send it to a different queue. So in this case, I'll rename this to a new email, and I will send this to the email queue, and then again, add content And this time I will send the raw message that we got from Auth0 to it. So I can continue on. There are dozens of different types of messages that can come in. Sometimes I don't want to handle it. That's okay. It'll get sent to event hubs and it'll get processed. For example, for some of the error scenarios, we just may be interested in that as a stream event as opposed to reacting to it right off the bat. So you can see here that we have, pretty quickly been able to create the process broker that uses Event Grid, Event Hubs, and Service Bus all in a single application. So if I switch back to my Auth0 account, one of the things I can go do is go here and I can add a new user. And so I'm going to add bob@contoso.com, give it a password. Create, and then what will happen is Auth0 will now recognize that a new user has been added to your tenant. It's going to go ahead and conjure up event. And so if we go to our logs in Auth0, we can see that there was a new successful sign up, and it gives you the information about that sign up, and it was Bob, and here's what the message is going to look like. So it's a very nice way of doing that. After they do that, it takes about a minute or so for Auth0 to go ahead and send it. Let's see if they sent it. If not, we won't wait that long for the demo. But they have. Great. So they've sent this already, and so we can see how that message has come in. That message got forwarded to an event hub. It got parsed, and so we can see the output of that message type, and that it's from Bob, and we've, because this is a new user sign up, we've sent this along from this new composed new user message type into the send message to the user queue. So now we've, downstream I would have either another logic app or a function or some other component that's listening to that, and then we'll have the rich processing for that. In this case, this logic app is just acting as a process broker. And then downstream components that are listening to those queues will then go ahead and hand off those messages, hand it off to them so they can go ahead and continue processing it. Okay, so that's the demo. Let's go back to the slides. So, what we've talked about today is the set of services under Azure Messaging. Service Bus is our enterprise messaging platform. Some of the stuff that's coming that you'll hear is Sheesh, I think tomorrow, in tomorrow's session. We'll talk about how we're really focusing on being able to lift and shift your messaging workloads from on-prem into the cloud. And so by providing a JMS 2.0 support for as the capabilities and 100% compatibility with Service Bus, so then you can, with a few lines of code, change your existing on-prem apps and then point them up to Service Bus, so you have that fast on-ramp into the cloud. And then Event Hubs, we talked about today how Event Hubs has the ability to have a Kafka RPC, so that if you're using Apache Kafka today and you want to move up into the cloud, it's very easy, using that same client, since we're talking the native RPC for Kafka, to go ahead and point at an event hub. We're going to continue investing on the Kafka ecosystem, and you'll hear Shubha later on in the conference talk about item potency and transactions and streams and connectors and all those components that come in the schema registry, all those things that come with Kafka. And so you're going to hear a lot more about that in that next session that's later on this conference. And so we talked a lot about Event Grid, and Relay continues to be our kind of our raw connectivity and things like the on-premises data gateway and a lot of other components around Azure rely on Relay to create that connectivity for your clients, and we'll continue working with those partners to extend those capabilities. Now, as your messaging platform, we want to make sure that we provide the reliability that you expect out of an enterprise messaging platform, or whatever type of messaging that you need. So we're in every region, every Azure region around the world, which today is about 58 regions are running our services. Every month we get 75 trillion messages coming into our messaging platform. Let that sit for a second. 75 trillion. We're able to handle 75 trillion sets of messages. But not only that, even though we're handling 75 trillion messages coming in, we're able to do that at 5 nines and an 8. At times we bubble up to 6 nines. And so it's, when it comes to reliability, the Azure messaging platform really provides that for you, and you can trust that we will go ahead and take your message and run with it. Now, of course, with 75 trillion messages and 5 nines and an 8, there's still that math works out to a lot of messages that need to be retried. But not too many platforms today can promise almost 6 nines of reliability for that messaging platform. So that's what I had today. So now what I wanted to do is open up to Q&A. Let me see
very good, Kevin. We might have a look at 1 or 2 questions, but the recording stops in 6 minutes. So we're running out of time.
Okay.
But indeed, well, like I said, maybe we can still have a look at 1 or 2 questions. And like I said, also, when the stream is over, you will still have access to the Q&A section. So you can always, take them by hand.
Okay, great. Let me go ahead and read through some of these messages. Sure. Event grid trigger logic apps, can it go through APIM, event grid to APIM to logic apps? Yeah, so one of the things that you need on APIM is the ability to go ahead and do that handshake with event grid, so that you can go ahead and forward those requests to APIM. So yes, you can do that. Will Azure Service Bus ever support content-based duplicate detection? That's a great question. One of the things that we do dupe detection based on properties, but if you need more details or have a particular requirement for that, please post it on our user voice, and we'll go ahead and make sure that we look at those. When do you expect D365 to be able to publish to event domains? That's a great question. Now that we've enabled partner topics, because Dynamics 365 is not an Azure service, so it didn't count as a system topic type of customer. But now with partner topics, what we call second party customers can now onboard just like system topics. So we are working with the Dynamics team at getting them to be a partner topic producer. So that keep tabs on us, and that is coming. That is something that we're working on with those guys.
Okay, let's take a last question, Kevin, and then we need to wrap up.
Last question. Is there any work being done to get events from Azure AD, like new user deleted? Well, considering that we just talked about Auth0 as our third-party identity provider, yes, we are talking now again with partner topics. It gives us the capability to go ahead and more easily onboard Azure AD for that. So we are in talks with them and trying to get them onboarded as well. Sorry, that's all the time I have questions for. Thank you for your attendance. And if you have any questions, please post them for EventGrid, askgrid@microsoft.com, or send feedback to us, either comments or blogs. And thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin, indeed, for being with us again. Certainly a hot topic. That's clear to understand from all the questions we get. So indeed, yeah, thanks again. And I think, yeah, for this first day of the conference, we're going to wrap up. This was the last session of the day. We hope all that you have enjoyed it. Of course, we still have 2 more days to go. So tomorrow, Tuesday, we will start at noon British Standard Time with a session from Dan Toomey about building event-driven integration architectures. So we hope all to see you back again tomorrow. And well, have a great rest of the day. Bye, everybody. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you. Thank you. Same to you.
Covey.co